So what got you interested in human trafficking?
It's a little different in my situation. It's not really reading a book or hearing about it, but my sister was trafficked. So it got real personal real quickly, right? So when you go through that experience, your older brother, there's no dad in the house, single mom, you're involved, you're engaged. And then so you're thrown into a world that you didn't know exists, number one. And then this person that comes back, sister, is not the same person that left, right? So you're dealing with major issues, and then immigrated to the United States and found out that the problem is even larger in the US. It's more prevalent here than even what it was in South Africa, where I came from. So by default, when your sister goes through it, you want to fight the battle and say no one else should ever be exposed to this ever again. Yeah.
So a lot of people, it seems like it's one of those topics that a lot of people don't cover, and it seems that it's also very common that human trafficking in the United States.
Yeah.
Why is it so common yet not talked about as much as it should be?
Yeah. Human trafficking, and we're talking about sexual exploitation of minors, is a very difficult thing to talk about. Number one, it's uncomfortable, right? And the perception is that it's prostitution, but it's very different than prostitution. Sure, the act is the same, sex is being sold, but we're talking about minors here, and all of a sudden you get into a psychology mind space here where it's manipulation, it's coercion, right? And so most of these cases today in the United States, the kid's still at home. They go to school, or they're in a foster care system. So it's very difficult to detect it. If we say prostitution, we can drive into any city in the United States and there's a red light district, there's an area, you look for girls or guys on the street. These are kids in the malls and in school, and so the educators and the police and the forces are not trained to profile this. They don't know what it looks like, because the conventional wisdom is prostitution has a face, right? And so child sex trafficking is very different.
How would you say that having unsecured borders, with illegal immigration being very easy to facilitate, how does that affect human trafficking or enable human trafficking?
So I'm going to give you the number. 30% of children that crosses the border today will be sex slaves in the United States. That's the number. It's 30%. And now these cartels in the South, let's say Mexico, understand that. And they understand that it's easier to sell a child over and over than a pound of cocaine or an illegal weapon. So they are, by design, sending kids across the border, right? And so a southern border that's open is the reason California is now the leading state in the United States for trafficking versus Georgia, because they're flooding into the system. Now the crisis is it's undocumented children. So now ICE, Homeland Security, can't go look for that child because nobody's looking for that child. That child is ghost, right? It doesn't exist. So it's a beautiful situation for traffickers, pimps, to say, okay, so if you're going to look for American kids, we'll just bring them across the border and we'll sell these kids into the sex trade. Underage, majority of them are 12 years old, right? So these are young children, to the point where they're sent across the border with a rape kit in their backpack, because they know, unless detained by authorities, and now we get into this whole conversation about securing kids at the border, making sure this is actually dad and not a pimp, keeping the child safe. If they're not detained by authorities, within an hour, the first rape will happen, within an hour. And that rape kit is a drug to make sure the girl does not get pregnant so that she can be sold over and over, because if she's pregnant, she has no use for the pimp. This is a very twisted environment. And so southern border is not just about a border and about immigration. It's got tentacles into all these kind of things, but definitely into trafficking.